everyone. We're back for another edition of our bipolar therapy group topics. My name is Matthew Brewer. I'm a registered marriage and family therapist and now known as an associate instead of an intern. Woo, sounds more professional. So a little bit ago, this is a little belated, we had our week 10 group and we talked about willpower, and I mainly based it on the book Rediscovering the Greatest Human Strength, Willpower by Baumeister and Tierney. So what I did is I picked out some really synthesized quotes and discussed them, and that's what I'm going to do here for you today, so you can all expand your knowledge on willpower and make the most of your self-control. So let's jump right in. First is the contention, kind of the thesis, that self-regulation failure is the major social pathology of our time. And the counterpart being that we think that research into willpower and self-control is psychology's best hope for contributing to human welfare. So many of our lifestyle problems are oftentimes due to a lack of ability to control our own impulses, whether it's, smoking or drinking or eating or whatever it might be. And the contention is that if we learn to exercise what Baumeister sees as the muscle of willpower, we'll be able to make better choices. And so one interesting quote I found, I don't know where it's from, but it's just, self-control is the best superpower you can have. Just something to think about. Everyone's always like, oh, what superpower would you have? And maybe the answer could be self-control. Let me try to see if I can convince you why. So the contention, again, I like that word, I suppose. Another word I like. The first step in self-control is to set a goal. So if you don't have something that you're reaching towards, that you're controlling your impulses towards, it doesn't really make any sense. So along the lines of improving your mood, which is a whole point of this kind of bipolar therapy group, is that the result of conflicting goals is unhappiness. So if we have different goals, it's unclear, we have tension. We talked about cognitive dissonance happening when our behavior and our beliefs contradict. Like, we believe it's wrong and unhealthy to smoke, but we do it anyway. That creates like a tension in our brain. And we either decide to change our belief or change our behavior. Kind of goes right into some CBT type stuff where you can change how you feel by changing your cognitions or your behaviors. Let's see here. So instead of having conflicting goals, if you can unify and prioritize your goals, that will help to increase your happiness and well-being. It makes it easier to know which impulses to control and what you're moving towards. And on the note of moving towards something, you can't just necessarily have these vague, like, I'm going to exercise more. What the research calls for is a next action, kind of being a key word. So the example they give is, don't just write it down on your to-do list, birthday gift for mom, do taxes. Actually write a very specific thing, like drive to the jewelry store. That is something that is doable, a next action that you can move towards. Instead of doing your taxes, write down, call your accountant. So you make that phone call, the ball gets rolling. Another psychological technique they often talk about is, if you don't want to do something and procrastinating, tell yourself, I'll do it for 5 minutes, and if I don't want to do it after 5 minutes, then I can stop. More often than not, you're going to keep going. Let's see here. Now, after spending a long day controlling all our impulses, maybe it's some of that Freudian id stuff, that super ego just bearing down, don't do that, don't do that. Our ego, they're using that term, Baumeister coined ego depletion. So our ego gets tired of being confronted with the reality principle and constantly controlling all these desires. And so our ability to regulate and self-control decreases. And that's like a muscle getting tired. And so in the same way that you can build up a muscle, you can also deplete it and fatigue it. And to kind of really put some corollaries to that, specify it, the experiments consistently demonstrated 2 different lessons. One, that you have a finite amount of willpower that becomes depleted as you use it. And 2, that you use the same stock of willpower for all manner of tasks. Now, I kind of have one reserve. It's not like willpower for this, willpower for that, but it's like this overall willpower. So we're going to try to turn that to our advantage. If we can strengthen this one muscle, we can strengthen it in all areas of our life. And one way of being mindful of our willpower is to pay attention to our blood sugar levels, our glucose. Literally, on a biological level, our brain runs on glucose, or if you're on a ketogenic diet, it can run on ketones. Um, Not a nutritionist, but that's what I understand. So go check that out with your nutritionist. But back to the glucose. The pattern showed up time and again as researchers tested more people in more situations that their glucose is problematic, their willpower is problematic. And one particular study found below average glucose levels in 90% of the juvenile delinquents recently taken into custody. So what are we going to do about this? How can we make it practical? One tip is if you have a test, an important meeting, or a vital project, don't take it on without glucose. Bring snacks. That's why they always advise that during something that involves stamina. You need that glucose. And when you're sick, save your glucose for your immune system and not for major life choices. When you're tired, sleep. You're not going to make the best decisions if you're sleep deprived. Your willpower is not going to be wise mind type of stuff. It's going to be emotion mind. And so, oddly enough, when asked whether making decisions, cognitive stuff, would deplete people's willpower and make them vulnerable to temptation, most people say no. They don't realize that decision fatigue helps explain why ordinarily sensible people get angry at their colleagues and families, splurge on clothes, buy junk food at the supermarket, and can't resist the car dealer's offer to this feature or that feature. So not only can stopping our behaviors deplete our willpower, but so can just making these choices, these decisions. And back to this term of decision fatigue, a really concrete example of that is being in the supermarket in the cereal aisle, and you see 100 different boxes and brands and types of cereal. And it's like, I don't even know what to choose. And that right there depletes your willpower, oddly enough. So if you can narrow down the amount of choices you have, that helps preserve your willpower. And the link between willpower and decision making works both ways. So it's this feedback loop. Decision making depletes your willpower, and once your willpower is depleted, you're less able to make decisions, or at least wise, smart decisions. So be careful of that vicious cycle. Kind of just a little, that's the first 4 or 5 chapters in the book. I highly recommend checking it out for yourself at the library, buying a copy. Again, it's called Rediscovering the Greatest Human Strength by Roy Baumeister and John Tierney. And the one thing I want to end with is kind of like an aside, but he talks about this Zeigarnik effect, and that incomplete tasks in our mind take up more energy and are remembered more easily than something that's completed. And kind of to make this helpful, psychologists, or maybe it's pop psychology, will talk about having a notepad by your bedside and writing down your to-do list so you don't have to keep remembering it. And making a plan for something can actually kind of complete some of that cycle and not exhaust you as much. So that Zeigarnik effect, as much as it's been seen in perceptual effects, like in Gestalt psychology, where you have all those different groupings and perception, like of a circle that's like this, your mind wants to like complete that closure. Same thing happens with our cognitive loops. We want to complete that. And so making a plan to complete something relieves some of that depletion. So that was a quick run through of willpower. And again, my name is Matthew Brewer. I'm an associate marriage and family therapist, and I'm currently open for clients in downtown San Francisco. And I would love for you to check out my website, MatthewBrewerTherapy.com, or give me a phone call at 415-745-9324. Thank you so much, and have a good rest of your day.